So the plantation owners had more power than the police in the town.
The plantation owners own the police.
The plantations own the police. Okay.
Yeah, all of those plantation owners around there, they made the decisions.
Mm-hmm.
And so you weren't going to mess with those black folks. Police weren't going to mess with no black folks. One time, I got stopped. Me and Liz was taking your granddaddy home, William Anderson.
Yeah.
He had stayed over at our house about 12 o'clock, and we were driving him home. So I was driving, and when we came off the highway, the police pulled us over. It was like 12 o'clock that night, and I didn't have any license.
Mm-hmm.
And Liz and I stuck to the point that Liz was driving. And Kirk Haynes said, if he said he was driving, he was driving. And that was the end of that. If he said he wasn't driving, he wasn't driving. That was the end of that.
So, but if, let's say when the police come to the window and they ask you who you are, when you say your name, then do you say the plantation that you work on? How did that go?
No, you just asked who you were. They knew who you were.
How did they know you worked on that plantation? Like, how would they know that?
They didn't know what plantation you worked on, but they knew you worked on a plantation, and they just didn't arbitrarily stop you. Then that night they stopped us. They talked to us, but they asked where you live. I told them I live right down the street there. Well, he knew when I told him I live right down the street. He knew that's Kirk Haynes plantation, and he ain't gonna mess with Kirk Haynes folks unless I was just drunk and driving and stuff like. But I'm just driving a car.
Right, but William, you said you used to talk about people living in shacks like wooden houses and brick houses. So what is that?
Well, every house down there, all the houses down there, mostly when I was in, were wooden houses, but they were nice homes.
Right.
They were nice. If the people took care of themselves, they were nice.
So what plantation did my grandfather work on, William Anderson?
William Anderson?
Mm-hmm.
William Anderson them own their own land.
I'm saying, what plantation did they work on?
They didn't work on any plantation.
Okay.
They own their own land.
Oh, they own their own land. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, William Anderson them own their own land. Okay. There was some black folks who owned their own land, and William Anderson was one of those people. His family owned their own land.
Okay. Now, like you were saying about like the schooling and stuff like that. So, what age did you go into the Army, or were you in the Marines or the Army, or?
No, I graduated from high school at 17, and I came to Chicago, and I lived with my Uncle Paul, my brother Paul.
Okay.
And when I turned 18, I joined the Army because I couldn't see myself growing up in Chicago, going to work, partying on the weekend, and starting out all over again, going to work, party on the weekend, start all over again. I couldn't see myself doing that. That wasn't the life that I wanted to live.
Where did Paul work? Did he work at a factory? Where did Paul work at?
Paul worked at Asfab Aluminum, and I worked there too until I was 17 years old, till I was 18. So
Paul helped you get a job there?
Paul helped me get a job there.
So,
but he didn't want me. He didn't want me. He said, "You finished high school. You don't need to stay here and working at the." And so I joined the military. See, his generation, the one that was older, they started encouraging us. Rita's mama, Rita's daddy, and those people, they were encouraging us to reach and do something different. Don't live in Chicago, running the streets and all this other kind of stuff. Don't do that. And so we didn't do that. Well, me and Robert Lee didn't. some of our cousins stayed there and drank themselves to death. We didn't do that.
So talk more about Paul. I never really, I don't know, how young I was if I ever got to meet Paul, but it seemed like Paul was the first one to move to Chicago, get his own place, and move the rest of the family up. So how did that go? What made Paul go to Chicago in the first place?
No, Paul when Paul turned 17, he moved to Cleveland.
Okay.
Because we had relatives live in Cleveland.
Mm-hmm.
He moved to Cleveland, and he stayed in Cleveland for about a year. And the girl that he was dating moved to Chicago, and he moved over to Chicago where she was, and he was there for a couple of years. And when Liz graduated when Sister married Willie moved to Chicago where Paul was and got a job, and then he brought Sister up there. Then when Liz graduated from high school, Liz moved up there, and the next year I graduated and I moved up there. But that's how we got there.
So what made Paul go to Cleveland in the first place, from Mississippi to Cleveland?
Well, he was looking for a better life.
Mm-hmm. And what made him choose Cleveland? What job did he take in Cleveland?
I don't know what he did in Cleveland, but he went to Cleveland because we had cousins that lived in Cleveland. Okay. And he went and lived with them.
And how did he go about buying an apartment building in Inglewood, Chicago?
I don't know, but I don't know how he did that.
Okay.
Because I wasn't privileged to that. But the thing I want you to see is families looked after each other.
True.
When they moved up north, they would come back and they say, "Okay, you come up here. I'm gonna help you get you a job. I'm gonna help you get a toho," they were called. And you never met any of our relatives from Cleveland?
I don't think so. What's a toho?
That's give you a start.
Okay, I got you.
You know, like if you want to move down to, say you want to move to Tennessee, I say, okay, come on to Tennessee. I'm gonna give you a toho. I might pay you rent for 2 or 3 months, and give you some startup money. That's what they call a toho. Okay. You follow what I'm saying?
Yeah, I understand.
That's a toho.
So, like you said, family looked after family, and Paul helped you get a job. Did he probably did the same for Robert Lee? Do you think?
Well, no, he was when Robert Lee was he was dead when Robert Lee moved up. When Robert Lee moved over, when Robert Lee came to Chicago, Robert Lee was always a go-getter. Robert Lee worked for Curtis Candy, and Robert Lee was making $9-10 an hour when guys were making $4 and $5. Right. And Robert Lee got drafted into the military. That's how he got in. Okay. He was drafted, and after he got drafted, he saw I was doing good, and he said, "I'm going to make the military a career too, like Hardell." And so he stayed in the military too.
So Paul was a really big help to the family to get a start and to come to Chicago and get better jobs.
Yes. Now, Paul's father. Now, Paul and me and Paul didn't have the same daddy.
Right. Paul and Mary had different fathers.
Paul and Mary had the same daddy. Their daddy died.
Right.
Okay. Now, Paul's granddaddy gave him 120 acres of land in Mississippi, but when the land became available to Paul, he didn't want to move back to Mississippi. He gave it to his cousin. Okay.
And do you know if they still have that land?
I don't know, because they lived out in the hills of Chula. I don't know. Okay. See, my mother came from Chula, from Black Hawk, from the hills of Black Hawk, Mississippi, from Chula, in that area, Holmes County, Carroll County, up in that area. My father came from Sunflower County. Mm-hmm. His father, his grandfather and stuff owned lot of land when they were little coming up, and I don't know. He doesn't know what happened to it, and so he left and moved to the Delta, and they don't. The land just was eaten up by taxes and stuff.
Yeah, but that's great what Paul did for a lot of his siblings though, to move down there and get him a start, to get him for a better life in Chicago.
Mm-hmm.